Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 591. Where is my true love? This deep emotions overwhelmed his logical mind and thus caused his brother's entire life of sadness. It will also cause an entire life of sadness for him. This also contributed to the dramatic tragedy today. The saddest is probably not his brother, as Ning Wuqing fulfilled his greatest wish at the last moment. The saddest should be Ning Wuqing. Jun Moxie said heavily. Because of the tragedy his love encountered, he single-handedly caused the tragedy for his sibling. At the last moment, his brother left the greatest regret for him. So, Ning Wuqing's own emotions caused his heartlessness and also caused a tragedy he can never remedy. But, didn't we cause Ning Wuqing's sorrow today? Xue Yan sighed, showing signs of unbearableness. You are wrong again. This sorrow will happen sooner or later, or maybe it is an issue of who triggered it. Furthermore, we did not cause his tragedy, as if it was not him crying over a corpse. It would have been me or you. Jun Moxie looked at Xue Yan with his high-spirited eyes. We only need to understand such sorrowful emotions. But definitely, we cannot let him off. It is exactly because we have seen such life and death separation of true love. All the more we need to cherish each other. Do you understand? Xue Yan, if it was me who was slaughtered, what will you do? Despite Xue Yan's calm disposure and unlimited composure, she could not help but shivered as though she saw Jun Moxie's corpse. Her heart clenched painfully, laughed painfully, and said, There is no meaning left for me to live. Jun Moxie sighed and said, This is the logic. This world is formed by countless of tragedies. If we don't want to encounter tragedies, then we must use all means to cause our enemies tragedies. This is the martial arts world. Jun Moxie turned around and looked at Ning Wuqing, and said softly, Or perhaps this is life. Ning Wuqing's feelings became his heartlessness, but it is exactly our feelings which make us heartless. This is true despite our differences with Ning Wuqing. This is life. Life encompassed lots of sorrow, blood and tears. Countless of fights and hard work, tender sentiments and true love. Xue Yan was digesting Jun Moxie's words and suddenly felt unsettled. Looking at Ning Wuqing cry and broken, Xue Yan turned to look at Jun Moxie's handsome side profile. She suddenly weirdly satisfied. So long, it is not him, lying on the ground. It doesn't matter to me. At that moment, Jun Moxie was speaking from the bottom of his heart, although his face was unprecedentedly serious. Even somewhat lonely. Fluttery, just like a frowning, depressed young master with somewhat pitiful eyes. Looking at all living things. Looking at time pass. His demeanor was that extraordinary. An apogee, so timeless. Just like a king in total control standing on the clouds looking down on the rest of the world. Xue was lost in her thoughts as she stared. At that moment, she suddenly realized that this unique charisma Jun Moxie gave off unintentionally was comparable to the demeanor of the Tian FA's leader and even more natural. This was innate in him. Magnificent and impressive. Jun Moxie turned his head and looked at her weirdly, and asked, What are you looking at? So much that you are lost in your thoughts. Xue Yan barely came to her senses and infatuatedly said, At you, you are so good-looking. Jun Moxie was perplexed. He did not expect a proud and cold Xue Yan could say such words. Despite Jun Moxie's 2 centuries of shamelessness, at that moment under no defense, he could not help but blushed. For a man to be praised as good-looking. Indeed, That was somewhat awkward. Xue Yan finally regained her senses after speaking and instantly blushed, and lowered her head down. Although Jun Moxie blushed at this sudden attack, he immediately recovered once he saw how Xue Yan was so shy. He playfully said, "Since it's so good-looking, are you willing to get slightly injured tonight?" Xue Yan's face and ears immediately flushed, feeling shy and embarrassed. She pinched him hardly. Suddenly she fiercely asked, "Right. I forgot to ask. Just now you were referring to the martial arts world, discussing about true love amongst human, saying how everyone only have one true love in a lifetime. Then let me ask you. Since you have so many girls around you, where does your true love lie in?" Jun Moxie was instantly dumbfounded, stared in shock, not knowing how to reply at once. He was speaking from his heart and unwittingly placed himself in a trap. How could he explain? He remained dumbfounded for a while before recovering, but he still could not respond to Xue Yan's words as he really did not know how to. However, at the same time, Xue Yan's words finally prompted Jun Moxie to consider this on his own. "Yes. I have several women around me. Those that have confirmed our relationship are Guan Han, debauchee and Xue Yan. Even if it is just the three of them, then, who is my true love? All three of them are out of the worldly gorgeous, but who did he love most?" Jun Moxie felt unsettled, wondering if he was too much of a playboy. If he had to choose amongst the three of them, who would he choose? Xue Yan? She seemed like the one he was most loyal to. However, Guan Han was coldly pretty and have given her all for the Jun family. She willingly gave up her innocence to save him and have sacrificed for the Jun family all these years with no complaints. Jun Moxie naturally felt that he owed her a lot and also had irreplaceable feelings for her. How could he bear to give her up? If he gave her up, Guan Han would probably lose all support and courage to live on, and might choose to end her life. This guilty conscience would naturally haunt him for the rest of his life. Could he give up debauchee? Debauchee was innocent and cute, and was faithful and true to him. When he was in his worst, she already unregretfully fell in love with him. For him, she even went to Tian. In fear that he did not want her anymore, she even chose to use aphrodisiac for things to happen. Although she did not succeed due to her ignorance, the fact that she was willing to give her all to him was undeniable. She even walked into Tianxiang city pregnant even though she was unmarried, despite the fact that the city was extremely conservative. She did not leave any escape route for herself. Who could bear to and really give up such true love? Could even the most heartless person bear to? There was also Xue Yan, who he could not give up even more. Xue Yan was an extreme supreme of the Tian Fa. They got to know each other through fate. She had been staying by his side. They worked together in sync. And both their hearts have long beat for each other. Himself, he had also changed from the initial jokes and flirting to the present inseparable feelings. Xue Yan remained a virgin her entire life, and this was her first time in love. Furthermore, she considered him in every aspect. How could he bear to leave her? If he really did so, Jun Moxie would belittle himself. Not mentioning how Xue Yan single-handedly prevented two supremes from the fantasy blood sea, defeated the Yellow Sun, and even swore to live or die with the Jun family when the three holy cities attacked them. Which of these did him any wrong? If he really gave her up, Xue Yan would probably not collapse nor commit suicide, but she would definitely lose hope, leave the Tian Fa forest and never return to the martial arts world again. This was for sure. Jun Moxie thought hard, but he could not give up any one of them. In fact, he could not bear to give up any one of them. To Guan Han, He felt love in the respect he had for her. In front of her, he was always warm and comfortable. He always seemed as though he needed someone to care for him, desired for someone to protect him. This feeling became even more obvious after they slept together in Tiannan. Although Jun Moxie was not willing to admit it, deep inside he knew that he had such a desire. To debauchee, he felt familiar and wanted to pamper her. More importantly, he felt she was a soulmate. After all, he hated himself so much back then, upset with himself, but yet, only debauchee gave him the consolation he needed. Although he could have pulled through on his own, that sincerity was like an oasis in a desert. It was the only pillar of support he had other than his family. To Xue Yan, Jun Moxie felt extraordinary. It was the feeling of his heart beating faster, having telepathy with her and a sense of mutual support. Such feeling was endless yet warm, satisfying yet joyful. If he had to seek love amongst the three of them, it would be Xue Yan. However, how could he bear to give up the other two? Did he really not have love for Guan Qinghan and debauchee? There was. It was just that it was not as obvious as his feelings for Xue Yan. Was I really so unfaithful? Jun Moxie questioned himself and forgot to reply Xue Yan. It was the first time he really thought hard. Who exactly do I love? Just as he was considering this tough and awkward question, Qing, who was mourning over his brother's death, stood up. He carried one half of his brother's mutilated corpse and stood up as his white hair flew messily in the wind. His stature was as usual, straight and upright, but he lost his charisma. He slowly turned around and lifted his head. The remaining experts from the Xuanshi Immortal Palace suddenly yelled, shocking both Jun Moxie and Xue Yan. They saw Qing's originally blushed face turned pale and layers of wrinkles appeared. Qing's Xian cultivation was extremely impressive and he had always his looks. Although he was almost 200 years old, he looked like a middle-aged man, around 40 to 50 years old, but at that moment, he aged so much, looking as though he never practiced Xian cultivation and was an old farmer who have sloughed his entire life, with a full face of wrinkles, so frail as though a passing wind could blow him away. Extremely frail and weak. Qing's eyes looked as though they came from the burning fire in hell, glistening with black rays. It was a representation of the extreme hatred. He stared at Jun Moxie, gritted his teeth, but yet, his words sounded out of the ordinarily calm as he enunciated every word clearly. Nice to see you, Jun Moxie. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 592. Attacking the heart with an edge of a blade. The moment Qing opened his mouth, everyone realized that his voice had become abnormally hoarse. His tone was calm, but everyone knew that Qing's heart was already dead. The sorrow he felt was greater than the pain of his broken heart. The younger brother whom he had depended on for close to 200 years suddenly disappeared from the world. Qing had no desire to continue living. All he had in mind was revenge. Whether or not he could successfully get his revenge, Qing did not want to continue living in this world. From his haggard face, everyone could tell one thing: Qing had moved all his spiritual energy and concentrated it at his dantian. He even took energies from his bones and his 5 internal organs that should be used to protect himself. He had even taken the spiritual energy that was used to live. He no longer maintained his youthful look or his graceful demeanor. Whatever charisma he had, whatever appearance he had, it was not important anymore. What he wanted was revenge. By concentrating his energy, he could increase his powers by at least a level. The moment he released all his powers, he would burn out and die. Even if a deity was to save him, he would not be able to revive. He was putting in his all and betting on his only chance. It did not matter if Jun Moxie died or not. Ning Wuqing would still die. Ning Wuqing had prepared himself for death, which showed how eager he was for revenge. Ning Wuqing gently placed the dead body of his younger brother on the floor and slowly stood up with a face full of regret and vengeance. Jun Moxie sighed and looked at him with sympathy. Life and death is just a cycle. Everyone would have to go through it. Ning Wuqing, you need to restrain your grief and accept the inevitable changes in life. After all, once you die, you cannot revive. For what had happened. I am so sorry. After what he said, even Xue Yan wanted to smack his mouth. He was the one that caused the death of his younger brother, but here he was asking Ning Wuqing to move on with life. Ning Wuqing laughed bitterly and furiously said, Jun Moxie, you killed my younger brother and now you want me to just move on with it? Don't you think what you just said is ridiculous? Jun Moxie snorted. Ning Wuqing, with your intelligence, it's hard for me to talk to you. You don't even understand what I'm trying to say. Ning Wuqing bellowed out of rage. Do you think I can remain calm right now? Jun Moxie, I do not need your fake sympathy. Ning Wuqing actually understood what Jun Moxie meant. He only needed to calm down and have a fair fight with him. But understanding was one thing. He would not accept Jun Moxie's pity on him. What Jun Moxie said could be interpreted as being kind, but it could also be interpreted as an ill intention, which was even more cruel. Rather than a reminder, it was more of adding oil to fire and making him even more enraged. After all, the one who's speaking was the murderer. When Jun Moxie put himself in a good light as if he was innocent, it made Ning Wuqing even more despondent and could not calm down. When facing an enemy, he would stop at nothing. Even if the opponent is his lover, as long as both of them had drawn their sword, they will be his enemy. Against his enemy, Jun Moxie had never been lenient. Jun Moxie sighed. He had achieved his goal and had no intentions to continue mocking him. Ni Wuqing, I know you want revenge from me. Come and get it. I will be waiting here for you. He paused for a while before pointing out. Ning Wuqing, you want revenge only because your brother died. But have you thought about it? How many people have you killed in this life? How many people actually wanted revenge from you? You being so reluctant and emotionally attached to your dead brother is so ironic that I want to laugh. Those people that died under your hands, their family, they are equally as heartbroken as you. Aggrieved? You actually have the face to say that you feel aggrieved? What about you? Jun Moxie. You think you are so high and mighty? Don't tell me that you have never stained your hands with blood before. Where's your conscience? Aren't you the same as me? Ning Wuqing crazily yelled. What means do you have to say me? You murderer. Me? I had never said that I'm a gentleman or a good person. I'm like you. In fact, worse than you, crueler and more heartless. But I would not be like you and act as if I was wronged. I killed people. Others naturally can come to kill me. It is a matter of course. Just like how I killed your brother. And you sought me for revenge. Jun Moxie stared at him coldly. Ning Wuqing, since you have already prepared yourself for death, then I will not give you more time to recover from your loss. You got yourself so miserable just because someone died. Living further would just be pointless for you. Come. The date today would be your death anniversary next year. Jun Moxie's words were as sharp as a knife. His words caused Ning Wuqing to be even more confused and his eyes started to waver. Leader Ning. You are now mentally disoriented. Do not be influenced and get caught in Jun Moxie's stimulus plan. If we combine our strength we can easily kill this pair of adulterous couple, someone from behind shouted. Ning Wuqing laughed bitterly but did not reply. He flicked his wrist and a long sword appeared. A wave of light shined in his hand. Actions were the best reply. Ning Wuqing straightened his back and for a moment, it was as if he had restored his charming old self, like a glistening sharp sword but with strong intentions of destruction. At that moment, Ning Wuqing's hurried gasp suddenly became peaceful. It was not because Ning Wuqing had calmed his anger but rather he forcefully pushed down whatever displeasure he had which caused blood to rush up his face. Update by Ning Wuqing slowly raised his long sword towards his chest and slowly caressed the sword with his left fingers, from the base to the tip. He muttered to himself, "The sword that I used to use was named Dragon Water Sword. After getting that sword, my skills improved quickly. I was able to save those that I wanted and also kill those that I wanted to. Since then, my sword was stained with the blood of my enemies and I have written an oath, as long as I have my sword, I stay alive. When my sword is gone, so am I." He took a deep breath and reminisced. That sword had accompanied me through stormy days and good days, and carried the title of a hero for a lifelong. As I weaved my sword, there was nothing I was afraid of. Brought down the god of war, seized supreme masters, killed extreme supreme masters and dominated the martial art world. The sword was me. I was the sword. A person, a sword. Our soul had been blended and can no longer be separated. During that very fight at Jun's house, the dragon water sword was broken into pieces by Extreme Supreme Mei. At that moment, I felt myself reaching my own limit. Extreme Supreme Mei had to die to erase the nightmare I was feeling. Ning Wuqing actually calmed down as he spoke, but as he continued, the surrounding atmosphere around him became more intimidating. Jun Moxie knew Ning Wuqing was not mentally disabled, but at this critical point, he was saying useless stuff not because he was reminiscing the past but he was using it to remember his glorious past and honors to motivate himself and gain more confidence for the fight. More importantly, it was giving him a reason to win the fight. Today, my younger brother died a horrible death and I have also walked to the boundary of my death. Ning Wuqing slowly lifted his head and his hair subtly moved even though there was no wind. On his wrinkled face, his deep eyes glowed, emitting scary stares. He fixed his gaze on Jun Moxie. Luckily, there's still a young and handsome guy to accompany me on my journey. At least I would have some amusement as I walk through the underworld. As long as you die, I believe Extreme Supreme Mei will not be able to continue living. If I can use my life and bring the two of you along with me then it will be all worth it. Jun Moxie smiled. Ning Wuqing. Your brother had his long-cherished wish realized and died with no regrets. Your death is already confirmed. But, if you want me to accompany you on your deathbed then it will just be your wishful thinking. I'm not saying that your abilities are weak, but honestly, even if the three holy cities' leaders were to combine forces, you might not be able to win us. Whether I can or cannot, I will not be able to see it. Ning Wuqing laughed coldly and suddenly carried his sword to his chest. He sternly faced Jun Moxie and bowed. He straightened his back and said, "Just now, I was lost and confused. If you had attacked at that time, I will not have the chance to take my revenge. I owed you another one. But I cannot forget about the revenge for my brother. Jun Moxie. After this bow, I will not owe you any more. I will let fate decide whether I live or not." Jun Moxie laughed ridiculously at him as he thought Ning Wuqing had gone mad. Previously, when he wanted to kill Xue Yan, he used all kinds of ways and methods that were cruel and mean to kill her. But now, towards the person that just killed his younger brother, he actually thanked him just because he did not attack him when he was vulnerable. He had his order reversed. When he was supposed to maintain his demeanor, he was more evil than anyone, but when he shouldn't care about his demeanor, he actually considered about his honor and grace. Ning Wuqing is such a weirdo. I could not understand. Jun Moxie. Please. Ning Wuqing became serious as he drew his sword. He bent his elbow, shrank his sword, and the tip of the sword brushed against his own rib. At that moment, he was like a whole new ruthless person becoming an invincible sword. The atmosphere became ominous and the surrounding became cold. Even his white hair that was fluttering seemed menacing. Jun Moxie felt a menacing aura looming over him. Such an intimidating aura. He really should not underestimate him. The remaining 17 members from Xuanshi Immortal Palace stood forward together, causing the ground to shake. All of them looked furious and shouted together, "We are going to get revenge for our brother, and we vow using our leader's life." Ning Wuqing stood still, but his eyes were firm and clear, and his aura became more imposing, like dashing waves rushing to hit the shore. Finally, he had reached his peak condition. The peak of his power. This might be Ning Wuqing's best form that he had presented in his whole life. His power was released from his body and burst into the surrounding. The sword that he pressed against his rib shattered into pieces, and the energy from the sword immediately went back into his body in large concentration. From the perspective of others, it looked as if Ning Wuqing was no longer just one person. He combined the sword with himself. The sharpest and unstoppable sword. Before, he was just like a sword. Now, he actually is a sword. A real combination of human and sword. The sword was him. He was the sword. Breakthrough. At this critical moment, Ning Wuqing had made his largest breakthrough. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 593. Two Battlefields. Jun Moxie's calm smile suddenly froze. He never expected Ning Wuqing to overload at this crucial moment. However, Ning Wuqing's overload inspired Jun Moxie to understand an important concept. Sword art. So that was why. Overloading is only possible when one is at the emotional boiling point, or in the face of life or death. From love, vengeance, hatred, and the sword. The true form of combination of human and the sword, joining as one. That was it. Jun Moxie stared without blinking at Ning Wuqing at his peak form, whose sword was creating a blade storm. He sticked out his right hand, and a glowing object appeared in his hand. Heavenly sword. It was the blood of Yan Huang. Feeling Ning Wuqing's peaking sword energy, the blood of Yan Huang, which just appeared in Jun Moxie's hand, suddenly floated by itself, stopped in mid-air, and struck towards Ning Wuqing, leaving behind a sharp glowing trail. Heavenly sword has its own soul. The blood of Yan Huang had been nourished with Jun Moxie's spirit and blood for quite some time. On top of that, it had been continuously supplied with unlimited energy from the Hongjun Pagoda for many years, finally forming its own soul. Like owner, like sword. Jun Moxie had the most untamed and wild character, and he always viewed himself as the greatest. Everything else was unimportant. The sword took after his traits. Even though there was only a little bit of soul in the sword, It could not tolerate the fact that there was another sword showing off its sword energy. It could not stop itself from challenging Ning Wuqing's sword. This heavenly sword was the strongest. Just like its owner. Jun Moxie was shocked too, and immediately held on to his sword. Ning Wuqing acted as if he did not see what happened to the sword, and stared at Jun Moxie eerily. Jun Moxie, do you have the guts for a duel? Just the two of us. Ending our hatred here and now. Jun Moxie pulled himself out from shock. There was no time to wonder what had happened to his sword. Ning Wuqing's words almost made him speechless. What? Ning Wuqing. You are shameless. Your side has 18 people. And you are saying you want the two of us to duel fairly? Ning Wuqing was unamused. He said, yes. And no using those sneaky assassination tricks. Those are unheroic and low. Jun Moxie was so angry that he started to laugh. So you are allowed to bully others with your larger team of people. And I'm the one with sneaky and low tricks? Can't believe this is happening. Before fighting, you actually set the rules to restrict your opponent. And then you are going to proceed to fight me. I'm clearly outnumbered, but you are still calling this a fair fight. Ning Wuqing, you can be shameless. But this is just too much. At first, I wanted to save you some face and send you on your way to meet your second younger brother without too much pain. But since you are so shameless, don't blame me for being too merciless later. What a pity. Who knows if Ning Fengyi would be able to recognize his disfigured big brother. Ning Wuqing shouted and suddenly leapt forward. He flashed across the sky, with his arm and leg stretched out, as if he was a word himself. The attacks rained down on Jun Moxie. Every punch from him was with sword energy, sharp and dangerous just like blades. Not just his punches, all his muscles, and even every strand of his hair, had indestructible sword energy. Ning Wuqing was already a powerful sword master. Now that he was exploiting and burning of his life potential, his powers increased by at least 2 times. Even though doing this meant that he would not have much longer to live. It was giving him great powers. He was on the same level as Xue Yan. If only damage output is in question, he was even more powerful than Xue Yan. Of course, this partly was because every part of him was like a sharp blade, lethal upon contact. Fighting against him felt like a battle against a dozen of sword energy pros. Although Ning Wuqing's state was temporary, and cannot fight lastingly, the destructive power at the moment was really fearsome. Even Han Yan Shui would not choose to fight against him on the spot, but to kite him, until his life forces extinguish. Ning Wuqing's power was not second to anyone in the century. This was the moment where he was at his peak and no other heroes would be of his match. Unfortunately, his opponent was none other than Jun Moxie, who could counter anyone. Jun Moxie laughed, unafraid. His silhouette was even more ghostly, and harder to grasp than before. Ning Wuqing was even angrier and he swore to kill Jun Moxie as he too flew up in midair. The two seemed like they were playing tag, and they quickly vanished from sight. The rest of the 17 masters circled around Mei Yan Shui. Mei Yan Shui glanced worriedly in Jun Moxie's direction. She knew that Ning Wuqing was really very dangerous at the moment, and he would be much worse than these 17 people combined. Even if it was her who was fighting him, she had no guarantee that she could kill him without paying a heavy price. Therefore Jun Moxie intentionally decided to divert Ning Wuqing away from here to leave time for Mei Yan Shui to deal with the 17 people. Mei Yan Shui's worry dissipated in an instant, and when she turned back, her face was determined and ready to kill. 6 beyond Supreme and 11 Supreme. all shouted and dashed forward. Mei Yan Xue yelled and struck first. Her sword was out of the sheath and it appeared like a glorious long dragon. She had to end this fight quickly, in order to rush over to Jun Moxie's side. Without any hesitation, she used the highest level skill of the Tian Fa Forest, the Tian Fa Heaven's Sword. First skill, Punishment of the Milky Way. Second skill, Punishment of the Stars. Third skill, Punishment of the Galaxies. Fourth skill, Punishment of the Heavens. For amazing ultimate skills at the same time. Sword light was like a rainstorm. Like two meteorites crashed in the sky. Their explosions creating brilliant light beams, lighting up the entire sky. Lightning, sword light, stars, the Milky Way, everything rained down in a frenzy. This shook both heaven and earth. The ultimate skill of the Tian Fa King of Beasts killed 17 Supreme Masters in one shot. Everyone was in shock. No one expected Mei Yan Xue to use such a destructive skill right at the start. The skill's sword light cut through the crowd, and cries in anguish rang out throughout the shopping mode battlefield. The 17 people, disregarding their injuries, all pounced forward as if nothing scared them anymore. Mei Xue Yan yelled again and cast another ultimate skill. It was the scariest and the worst skill, Tian Fa Heaven Sword Skills. This was how the name of the skill came about. The skill was said to be able to punish even the heavens. What could possibly escape its punishment? Her body turned rapidly and formed a huge light beam connecting the sky and the earth. Her body was completely hidden in the light, and floating 2 meters high in mid-air. Wherever she went, there were incessant cries, sounds of weapons shattering. Body parts were sliced off and flying about. Jun Moxie was like a spirit, shifting left and right swiftly. In the blink of an eye, they already traveled a few hundred meters. Ning Wuqing was overflowing with sword energy and he dashed towards Jun Moxie no matter how unpredictable the latter was being. Ning Wuqing felt like a cat chasing a mouse. Run as much as you can. When you run out of energy later, I will not disappoint you. Don't worry, I won't kill you immediately. I will cut 999 times on your body. You would be wishing for your death. Ha! And you used to be the one who enjoyed torturing your enemies. Now it's time for a taste of your own medicine. Ning Wuqing realized that Jun Moxie was not very fast at all, and he burst out laughing like a maniac in joy. Jun Moxie did not say anything. He dodged the attacks and started to slide agilely on the snow in the woods. Ning Wuqing growled and gave up dodging obstacles. He dashed straight towards Jun Moxie, and destroyed all the rocks and trees in his way that Jun Moxie tried to use as obstacles. After the woods, they reached a broad path. There was nothing in front but rocks and the cliff. With no path in front or behind Jun Moxie, he had to face the death god that had been chasing him. Jun Moxie, where can you possibly run to now? Jun Moxie did not stop. He stopped short in front of the cliff, turned around and smiled creepily at Ning Wuqing. The next thing Ning Wuqing knew, Jun Moxie disappeared completely. Ning Wuqing thought he already had Jun Moxie at his fingertips, and he was shocked when he vanished. He looked around but Jun Moxie was nowhere to be seen. He was about to yell when tumbling sounds came from above his head, and from the sound of it, many enormous boulders were crashing down on him. Just one would weigh a few thousand kilograms, and there were many rocks hanging from cliffs within the radius of at least 200 meters. Was there going to be a landslide? No. The landslide had already begun. But why here? And at this timing? If it was not coincidental, someone must be behind this. Jun Moxie. Must be you, brat. Come out if you are not a coward. Ning Wuqing's sword energy shone even more brightly than before, and he dashed towards the falling rocks. Thousands of rocks were tumbling down. Even if Ning Wuqing was really powerful and invincible, he was pelted on by the rocks and crying out. Rocks were raining down on him like storm. Ning Wuqing had nowhere to hide or dodge. After destroying some large rocks, he was finally pinned to the floor by the never-ending storm of rocks. Power of Earth. This was Jun Moxie's first experiment using power of Earth, and it was surprisingly effective. Jun Moxie landed on one of the rocks. Just as he was about to heave a sigh of relief, the ground beneath his feet started to shake. Jun Moxie was alarmed, so he flew up and vanished again. The rocks exploded after some shaking as sword light emerged again. A disaster of such scale did not end Ning Wuqing's life. The current Ning Wuqing was no doubt really amazing. His clothes were tattered, and blood was flowing down his chin. Despite his pitiful appearance, sword energy was still overflowing from him. He flew up, arms wrapped around himself, and then rapidly swung his arms out. Instantly, two powerful sword energy was formed all around him in clear circles. This old monster seemed to be much harder to deal with after his upgrade. Jun Moxie smirked. Ning Wuqing swept around with sword energy but did not find any target. Just as he was about to use his sword energy detection, he felt coldness on the back of his neck. He immediately turned and cast sword energy in the area with his arm. As of this moment, his arm was his sword. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 594. Please send me on my way. There was nothing behind him, not even a shadow of Jun Moxie. Ning Wuqing glanced back and forth continuously. All of a sudden, something showed up and flew out of the rocky area. The flying stone that came out of nowhere just now was so heavy that even though Ning Wuqing's strength hit new highs, he still suffered from a pretty substantial injury. If he were to do it again, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to withstand it. A smart man won't stand under a breaking wall. Ning Wuqing decisively escaped the dangerous grounds. Green fields and the woods are just ahead. Ning Wuqing's body's condition began to deteriorate. His 2 feet on the ground, eyes observing, but suddenly his feet went soft. No one knew when the big hole in the ground had formed. Ning Wuqing was not prepared for this. The next moment his entire body fell through the entire hole. However, he managed to react quickly in time and took one big and ferocious breath. The sword energy formed in his hands, and with that sword energy he aggressively hit. Using the help of the shockwave, it pulled his entire body out of the hole. Ning Wuqing's ability to react in emergencies was not too bad, but unfortunately for him, as he pulled his body out, Jun Moxie had already appeared in front of him with a solemn face, with a long sword in his hand heading for his eyes. Ning Wuqing was horrified. He held out his dual sword energy to retaliate, but his slow body eventually fell back into the cave again. This inexplicable cave was about a full 7 to 8 feet. Ning Wuqing held himself together, falling through it. Jun Moxie was still outside the hole. There should not be any more sneak attacks in this cave. He could just wait for his toes to touch the ground, then use that energy to rebound out of the cave. This little distance above ground can't stop Ning Wuqing. Even if you fill it with sand, I will still be able to rush out. But in the process of falling through, a sudden lightning bolt shot through the mud wall of the cave. This was a huge shocker to Ning Wuqing. He was astonished. He tried to dodge the bolt, but his shoulder got struck unavoidably. Ning Wuqing's anger was through the roof. He roared in anger. He violently stuck out his other hand. And with a bang, a sword appeared and a deep mark could be seen on the ground. It's coming to the end of it. Another mysterious sword struck through. And this time round, the target was the back of the bran. Ning Wuqing could not catch his breath in time but was already smashed back into the hole. He had used almost all of his remaining power. He turned over and crashed the ground head first. But this was not the end of it. The moment I touch the ground, I can and will avenge. And immediately. No matter how sly this Jun Moxie is, I swear to God I will slay you today. However, Ning Wuqing immediately panicked. What is going on? He clearly saw that he was going to land onto the ground. But looking again, why is pitch black? There was miles below his feet before he could reach the ground. What exactly is going on? Ever since he began to start falling, as long as Ning Wuqing inhaled any single moment, a sword would emerge from the soil and take his life. And its motive was his vitalities, and to disrupt his breathing, to the point where he could not breathe. This Ning Wuqing's face was already flushed red like a ruby. Even though he was a master of the world, a person's breath could only last so long. But if he was not able to take a breath even in the midst of a battle, he would be afraid to die as well. Ning Wuqing had been hit hard now. He had almost reached his limit. What was even more terrible was that he was obviously falling legs first. But in the middle of everything, his orientation was inverted and he was falling head first now. What is even more exasperating was that as long as he tried to use his arm to pierce into the mud wall to stabilize his body, the mud wall would instantaneously vanish into nothingness. It felt utterly uncomfortable. This process was absolutely not what a human could have. The moment that Ning Wuqing had feared for long was coming. He could not exchange breaths for so long that his face was beginning to turn purple. The fall seemed to be endless, and it would not reach the end at all. The uninterrupted attacks in the middle of this endless journey had already reached 15 to 16 times. Every time it happened, he was in between life and death. Now, even if he had the opportunity to breathe, Ning Wuqing would not even dare to. Because, as long as he exhaled this last bit of breath, he would need to dodge all the bolts. He could only wait and see what happens. He could only follow his inertia and continue to fall. Ning Wuqing even estimated, according to the angle of fall just now, he had fallen at least 100 feet, but it was not yet the end. God damn it. Even if it's a cliff, this height is enough. Finally. Bang! Ning Wuqing slammed to the ground. Crack. Many bones in his body were crushed. His head was deeply rooted into the hole and he instantly fainted. Because the end of the ground turned out to be a harder stone than that of the mountain rock. The fact that Ning Wuqing did not have his skull split apart meant that his skull was actually quite strong. In the darkness, a shadow flashed. Jun Moxie appeared beside Ning Wuqing. He sneered. He shrugged his legs a little and the rock separated. Ning Wuqing's head, which was full of fresh blood oozing out of it, bounced out. The outcome would be decided like this. Judging from Ning Wuqing's strength, if Jun Moxie was to hit him hard on, he would be bound to death. However, Jun Moxie had innumerable tricks up his sleeve. Like dragging on Ning Wuqing by his nose and run around madly. Or to one by one, use his 5 elements of strengths to set a deathly trap. And make Ning Wuqing dash for his own life. He was about to make this pro player collapse in front of him. The ruthlessly slaughtered but still living Ning Wuqing came to his senses. He looked around, only to realize that his whole body was lying flat onto the ground. Every single part of his body was crying pain. His head was itchy, but there was this thick liquid flowing out of it endlessly. He strenuously used his hand to touch it, and all he felt was pain. His consciousness gradually returned. It was difficult to move about. He had at least 10 bones broken within his body. His combat power definitely diminished. He could see a blurry silhouette standing in front of him, but Ning Wuqing closed his eyes. He took a deep breath and said with a hoarse voice, "Jun Moxie? Is that you?" "Why, of course. Ning Wuqing. Seems like you haven't been made muddle from the fall." Jun Moxie deeply voiced. Ning Wuqing resentfully sighed. He faintly asked, "Jun Moxie. This time round this old man lost. But, are you even human? Or, are you actually a ghost?" He paused. "Are you able to control Earth?" Control Earth. This was the magical power of legendary talents. This kind of thing has never happened in this real world. Even before this, if someone talked to him about it, Ning Wuqing would sneer. But at this moment, through his personal experience, he subconsciously asked him. After experiencing so much, if Ning Wuqing still could not see any bit strange about Jun Moxie, he's just too foolish. Jun Moxie thought and responded. "What do you think?" Ning Wuqing thought that he had admitted it. He laughed. "No wonder you don't care about anything. No wonder you're so bold. You have the magical powers to control heaven and earth. You're such a person, yet we were still made to fight with you endlessly. To force you step by step to walk a path of ours. We were just so foolish. Not knowing just how big and how vast the ocean is. My 3 holy lands are just ants who sheltered the world. Yet we are not aware of how high the sky is and how deep the well is for the frog that we are." Jun Moxie kept silent for a long time, then replied. "Our situation has long been clear. Your 3 holy lands, even if they did not make enemies with me, I would find you guys either way. You should know what I mean." Ning Wuqing coughed and laughed. "Yes. For Supreme May. You would do that." He tried to raise his head with much effort, but his neck bone had broken. "Jun Moxie. The words I said today, although it was a provocation, it is also the truth. I hope you can consider it carefully." Jun Moxie said in a cold and serious tone. "About that, you don't have to worry. I already made plans." Ning Wuqing laughed. "Seems like I can't exact my revenge." Jun Moxie remained indifferent. "What do you think? Do you think that in this state, you have the strength to kill me?" "Nothing." Ning Wuqing laughed, tears and his snort coming out. He laughed tauntingly, but this ridicule was for him. He stopped his laughter, then said softly, "Jun Moxie, I beg of you this one thing." "What thing?" Jun Moxie probably guessed what it was. "Send me on the road. I really want to leave. At this point in time where my brother can still recognize my broken body." Ning Wuqing's eyes gradually disappeared. "My brother is waiting on the road for me. I can see it. He's waving at me." Jun Moxie. "You don't know that although my brother's powers are strong, he's pretty timid. When he was young, he would be afraid when walking alone on the road in the dark. I want to hold his hand." Jun Moxie took a deep breath and did not say a word. He could only hear Ning Wuqing muttering, "This road, it's really dark." and cold. If you didn't have me, my brother, how would he dare to go? He's alone, and will be lonely, and afraid. I'm his big brother, and will always be. I need to go accompany him. I will tell father and mother. I have sent Feng Yi home already. He's one of us Nings now. Ning Feng Yi. Father and mother don't know of this yet. Full of warmth. His mouth was dripping blood. His white mustache was turning red. Jun Moxie sighed. Ning Wuqing. Even though he was not a good person. But, considering his attachment to his family, it's really touching. And also Xiao He. My Xiao He. After 100 years apart, we shall reunite again today. From this day on, no one will bully you ever. Ning Wuqing's face was flushed with red. And in his eyes, one could see an array of colors of happiness. But his vision was already blurred. Reunion. I'm coming home. Suddenly, his body straightened. Not knowing where the strength came from. He could even sit up properly. His broken neck, even, with a crack sound, became reattached magically. Jun Moxie. Send me on the road. They are waiting for me. Xiao He's eyes are full of tears. She's waited for me for 170 years. I can't wait any longer. Quick. Hurry. I beg of you. Ning Wuqing's eyes shined in the darkness. His face was full of bliss, as though his loved ones were really waiting for him to return for reunion. Jun Moxie closed his eyes, and with the godly sword, blood of Yan Huang, he pierced through Ning Wuqing's heart with no mistake. He said in a deep voice, I wish you all to finally reunite. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 595. Xue Yan's concerns. From the bottom of his throat, Ning Wuqing let out a sound similar to a sigh, struggling as he whispered, "Th. Thank you." With a drop of his head, one of the strongest warriors of this generation had left this world. Perhaps, in another world, he had already reunited with his family, living jovially with his family. There, he was free from hate, free from separation, free from death, free from regret and reunited with his family. He could enjoy his peace and joy from then on. Jun Moxie sucked in a deep breath. For some inexplicable reason, he sensed that his mood was a little heavy. Slowly, he stood up and said softly, "Originally, I had so many things I wanted to talk to you about. But how you met your end was unbelievably heartless. I hope that in your future life, it won't be an ending as cruel as this. I'll make sure that on your resting place, 100 feet underground, there will be nobody who will disturb your peace. Rest assured that you can lay here in peace." Finished with his sentence, Jun Moxie's body slowly rose up. Following his body, the soil under his feet collapsed continuously as it buried Ning Wuqing's body deeply underground, 100 feet below the ground. A blinding light entered his eyes as Jun Moxie finally emerged. In that moment, he felt like he had just returned from the netherworlds to the human world. The illusory words that Ning Wuqing had uttered right before her death brought a wave of emotions over Jun Moxie. The ground regained its uniformity, and nobody could tell that under this patch of soil, a ground-shaking, abnormal fight had taken place. And it was where a warrior of beyond supreme level would be buried forever. Moxie. Where are you? From afar, Xue Yan's worried voice echoed. Jun Moxie's face broke into a radiant smile. Raising his voice, he called out, "I'm here." With that, he fell, seated on the ground. Even though Jun Moxie had a glorious victory over Ning Wuqing just before, the losses he had suffered were not shallow either. Unleashing all of the energy within his body, the soil around him loosened and began to float up around his legs. Midway, he had to deal with ambush by some assassins as well. Even so, he successfully managed to defeat Ning Wuqing. But at that moment, Jun Moxie was also at his limits. The energy he had left in his body was near to nothing. If he wasn't afraid that Xue Yan would be worried, Jun Moxie would have dived into the Hongjun Pagoda and come out only after he recovered. After all, that place was safest. Sensing Jun Moxie's voice, Xue Yan erupted in joy. Before this, she unleashed her Tian Fa ultimate skill in succession to finish her battle. Searching everywhere to find traces of Jun Moxie and Ning Wuqing's whereabouts, she did not find any and could not help but panic. While she was looking for them, she was near despair. After all, Ning Wuqing's health regeneration abilities were shockingly high, and at such a critical moment, she had a breakthrough and her abilities leveled up further. Fighting against such an opponent, Jun Moxie was in a precarious situation. If it weren't for Jun Moxie's voice message that he had sent beforehand to tell her not to worry, saying that he had a way to get out alive, Xue Yan would have dropped everything in her way, abandoning her opponent to go after him. But till the very end, her worries continued to hang heavily in her heart. At this moment, when she could finally hear Jun Moxie's voice once again, her anxious heart could finally be at ease. A white shadow flashed as Xue Yan appeared before him. In the moment she saw him, her beautiful features finally revealed a glimpse of warm happiness. On Xue Yan's body, there were several places that were dyed red, and there were even some wounds where fresh blood was still flowing from it. But evidently, without even taking care of her own injuries, Xue Yan rushed to look for Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie sat on the ground, devoid of strength as he looked at Xue Yan. Softly, he murmured, "You're injured?" Even Jun Moxie did not realize that an endless amount of tenderness and heartache permeated through his voice. Compared to the words he had spoken before, there was a world of difference. Without question, Jun Moxie had killed many people before this. Perhaps, he had killed so many that he had become numb to it all. But there had been no one who had given him as large of an emotional impact as Ning Wuqing had today. From being concerned to unconcerned. Because of his concern, he became unconcerned. And at the very end, Ning Wuqing created the biggest tragedy and regret. That made Jun Moxie very emotional. Jun Moxie had never felt like he did in that moment, to care for the people around him, and his closest kin. In his heart, he quietly made a promise, for anyone who is a part of my family, I'll make sure that they live peacefully and happily. I won't let their lives have a single ounce of regret. Like Ning Wuqing, who had regrets that made him live as though he were dead, that was what made Jun Moxie feel emotional. For something like that, Jun Moxie decided that he definitely would not let it happen to him, nor to his family. To take care of those people, how would I be able to do it without paying a small price for it? Xue Yan laughed sheepishly. Without a care for her own injuries, she asked concernedly, "How about you? Are you okay? What happened to Ning Wuqing?" "Since I'm still alive, of course he's met his end. Don't worry, I've just used a bit too much strength. Maybe feeling a little weak now, but there aren't any problems." Jun Moxie laughed, saying, "It's better than Ning Wuqing, who's deeply buried into the ground, right?" Ah, burying his bones in the soil? You mean you've killed Ning Wuqing? Mei Xue Yan widened her eyes in shock. In her imagination, Jun Moxie could only use his ghostly, lightweight moves to hold Ning Wuqing back. And that would be good already. As to obtaining victory and killing Ning Wuqing, Mei Xue Yan could not even imagine how Jun Moxie would be capable of such a feat. To be accurate, he died under the weight of his own regrets. Jun Moxie said, deep in thought. He was in too much of a rush to kill me. That's why I had an opportunity to take advantage of that. If he fought calmly and strategically, as to the consequences, even though I have a way to survive, killing him would have been impossible. Jun Moxie recalled the moment when he intentionally ran down the cliff. It was obvious that there was no path ahead of him, and he was running towards that direction. If he had full confidence and continued on, wouldn't that have been certain death for him? As long as it was something that someone could obviously see, then it meant that there was a trick behind it. But Ning Wuqing was blinded by revenge and lost all rationality. Without a second thought, he followed and chased after him. And it was because he managed to unleash enough energy to cause the soil to rise up into a mountain shield the first time that protected Ning Wuqing from any injuries, causing him to lose a huge part of his battle power, which led to Ning Wuqing's loss at the end. If it weren't for that, even if Jun Moxie created an endless number of traps with his power of earth, Ning Wuqing, who had overwhelming power, could have broken through these traps in an instant, and would still have enough power to forcibly attack him. With the amount of energy he had at the moment, there was a limit to it. The power of earth was something he had just learnt as well, and it was not as easy to master as the power of metal. The outcome was really hard to confirm. Since Jun Moxie had yin yang escape, he definitely would not have died. But Ning Wuqing should not have lost his life either. About Ning Wuqing, Jun Moxie was not willing to talk more about him. He asked, what about those people? Mei Xue Yan's face revealed a cold hardness to it as she said, killed them. She tilted her head slightly, looking at the direction she had come from, and said in a low voice, all of them attacked like they were suicidal, so I could only take care of them using my full power. Also, I was worried about your safety. Anxious. I ended the battle quickly. In about 15 minutes. I used the Tian Fa Heaven's Sword ultimate skill, and used it a total of 3 times before I could finish the battle. Finish the battle? They're all dead? Jun Moxie could not help but widen his eyes. But those were 6 of the Beyond Supreme Tiers, and 11 Supreme Warriors. And all of them fell to Mei Xue Yan's hands. Why was this girl so vicious today? Even I didn't expect it. After I got rid of my old injury, I've gotten even better than before I got injured. Especially in terms of speed. I've reached a level where I could not even dream of before. And in this time, my progress in training is a lot faster than before. So, this battle was unexpectedly easy. Mei Xue Yan ruminated as she said, looks like those 3 pills you gave me were more useful than I thought. Jun Moxie laughed as he said, don't let your guard down. This time, they only had 6 people of Beyond Supreme Tier. And they didn't prepare a strategy. And they were definitely shocked out of their mind by your level up. And your alarming speed also gave them no time to react. Since they did not have a leader to lead them, and 3 or 4 of them were injured at the Jun family gathering, so they were not at their full power. If they aligned all of these conditions, how would you have such an easy fight? But if there is a next time, it's better to stay vigilant. Okay. Mei Xue Yan gently nodded her head, and raising her delicate eyebrows, she said, this time, they really crossed the line. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so harsh on them. After all, most of the people here have the ability, chance and qualifications to join in the heavenly battle. You're saying they're talking about after we get married? About our kids? Jun Moxie, in that moment, understood why Xue Yan was so ruthless. Yes. Xue Yan blushed, but soon after her face turned pale, and she asked meekly, Moxie, if it really were the case, what do I do? Wouldn't I be hurting you? This problem, even though we can choose not to care and ignore it, but we still have to face it. Jun Moxie replied confidently, Xue Yan, relax. I definitely won't let that happen. I have faith. You just have to trust in me. He recalled the legend that was passed down in legacy. Didn't Liao Zhai's only daughter marry a human and ended up giving birth to a son? Bai Su Zhen married Su Xian, and still gave birth to a fat boy. Since it was a human mother, how was it possible for them to give birth to a Xian beast? Even if it were true, and they gave birth to a Xian beast, with his and Xue Yan's genes, he could definitely learn to shape-shift into a human in a very short of amount of time. And his looks were not a big issue. At the very most. In his infancy, he just had to not meet anyone. Anyway, their entire family was going to live in Tian Fa forest. That was a place where more beasts than humans resided. Taking a step back, based on his Hongjun Pagoda's unbelievable abilities, there was no way he would let Xue Yan have any regrets. These words were not something that Jun Moxie would dare to affirm before he fully understood the true capabilities of the Hongjun Pagoda. But ever since he saw the Getting Started menu, he was filled with confidence. For humans or demons, they could both modify and shapeshift, and Xian beasts belonged to the demon tribes. Xian beasts could shapeshift like the demon tribes to humans, and there was practically no difference between them. Xue Yan was still worried, frowning as she asked concernedly, but what if in a 1 in a million chance? What if something like that happened? Then I, Xue Yan, won't be able to show my face to Jun family, and even more so to you? Xue Yan, you can rest assured, I really have a method. For an issue as huge as this, how would I dare give you a half-hearted answer? As he said this, Jun Moxie pressed his lips to Xue Yan's ear, and spoke a few words. Xue Yan's face turned red. Then feeling reassured, she said, then that's great. Oh. Xue Yan, my dearest. You asked such a question so excitedly. Is it because you're in a rush to give a baby boy to me? Don't rush. Wait till tonight. We'll seriously explore and meticulously experiment this matter. What exactly was it again? Jun Moxie laughed strangely, with a laughter that was filled with wretchedness. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 596. If you treat me well, I can give you anything. Get away from me. To one corner. Further away. Can't you see that I am injured? Xue Yan flushed with embarrassment instantaneously. After a few exchanges and laughs, the two then began to attend to Xue Yan's wound. Jun Moxie was a little heartbroken at the sight. To be honest, there were a total of 13 wounded areas on her body, 7 caused by swords and 4 due to opponents' mastery. Her waist and shoulders were bruised by opponents' kicks, with more of abrasions and less of internal injuries. Though her injuries were less severe, Xue Yan cannot stop herself to vent her frustrations within. She retrieved a pill, using snow water to remove the impurities. Another pill was kept within and prescribed for Xue Yan. She undressed herself, showing off her fair snow-white skin. A little wobbly and uncomfortable, but still she kept still when Jun Moxie applied the medication on her wounds. When she had already given her heart to him, does showing her body even matter? But Jun Moxie had no other intentions. Xue Yan's injuries were like his own. If he had not wanted a quick fix and was less full of himself, Xue's capability would have killed the 17 masters from Rongzhou Xian, one by one. Fighting a quick battle may not be the wisest decision after all. If that was the case, now is not a good time for any brilliant tactic. Thinking of that, Jun Moxie cannot help but to feel a little heartbroken, especially at the wound on her back that was caused by the sword. The wound was half a foot long, almost hurting her bones. For a peerless beauty like Xue Yan, such a wound was enough to leave flaws on her skin, not to mention the other areas that were affected. While Jun Moxie was applying the medication with care, he maneuvered the heaven and earth's spiritual energy. Pulsating, it gushes into Xue Yan's nerves and pulses, healing the spots of her injuries completely. Actually, the medication that Jun Moxie brought along was enough to heal Xue Yan's injuries, without leaving any traces of blemishes, but only that it required more time. Using Hongjun Pagoda's spiritual energy healing treatment, in this case, was honestly wasteful. But what young Master Jun had was capital. What was wasted was already wasted, and there was not a trace of regret on his face. If Hongjun Pagoda is spiritual, it would definitely anger someone, knowing what Master Jun had done. He had used this magnificent heaven and earth's spiritual treasure to his advantage, picking up the girl he likes. Xue Yan could feel that the pain from the wounds, which were originally hurting, were soothed and thus calming her whole body. She guessed that the medication had took effect. What came after was a sudden gush of heaven and earth's spiritual energy that rushed through her body. She was momentarily energized, every nerve and fiber pulsating with energy. Xue Yan rejoiced. This was the result of her practice of heaven and earth's core energy, used at the right time to replenish her core energy that had diminished. But the moment the thought arose, she realized that the heaven and earth's core energy had been transferred and was treating her own wounds. Instantly, the wounds felt numbed. This was a sign of recovery. But Xue Yan was mad with anger. How can I allow myself to use such precious heaven and earth's core energy on these negligible wounds? How desperately do I need them? I am a typical example of a prodigal. Jun Moxie's reputation of a prodigal son being fed with a silver spoon was truly well-deserved. But how can I lack the self-control as well? Xue Yan was irritated. She used what was left of her and spoke. Finally, Jun Moxie, what the hell have you done? What the hell have I done? I am treating your injuries. Jun Moxie reasoned. To him, the use of heaven and earth's spiritual energy was not wasteful at all. There was plenty around. Xue Yan was infuriated almost to the point of insanity. Grating her teeth in anger. Why, you, such a small injury. How could you waste the heaven and earth's spiritual energy? Why, you, can't you just learn to control yourself? What? Jun Moxie felt a little strange instantly. Batting his eyes, he said, You really need this? You should have told me earlier. Or else how will I know? Just tell me if you need it. At that moment, Xue Yan's wounds were completely healed. Jun Moxie gently helped Xue Yan to put on a bare-leathered thick coat. Xiong Kai-shan's bare-leathered coat was essential for the road ahead. What nonsense! I practice core energy. Of course I will need it. Your heaven and earth's spiritual energy. Such a refined and rare piece which I had never seen before. How can you use it to treat such negligible wounds? You are making me boil with so much anger that I want to bite the hell out of you. Xue Yan became spiteful. What? Ha, ha, ha. Jun Moxie had a big laugh. He had really gotten a treasure this time. Opening his palms, he heard a bang. The heaven and earth's spiritual energy surrounded every part of the place. Mei Shui could not believe her eyes. What is happening? Hee. This. I have plenty of it. Jun Moxie stretched out his fingers lightly, tugging on Mei Shui Yan's chin, talking in a gangsterish manner. Babe, if you do as I please, serving my needs, I can give you as many heaven and earth's spiritual energy as you wish. Master Jun squared his shoulders playfully, sending out gloating laughters. In response, May the beauty beat off Mao Deng Tuzi's hands and pouted her lips, ignoring Jun Moxie. But she was conflicted. Should I allow him to take some advantage? That is heaven and earth's spiritual energy, such exquisite and rare treasure which I have been longing for. No, I will not plead him for it. If he refuse to give, with an innocent heart of a mystical beast, he would have gave in to any girl who pouted, brows furrowed or showed any form of displease, quickly and willingly giving them the heaven and earth's spiritual energy. This would require Mei Shui Yan to be 1,000,000 times more careful. But given Mei Shui Yan's pride, she would rather go close to Jun Moxie or people similar like him, who were certain who they want to dedicate their lives to, than to flirt with them. Of course, Jun Moxie knew this perfectly well. Jun Moxie acted decisively on his own since Mei Shui Yan was injured. Both of them rested for a few days. Mei Shui Yan was very touched by the act that she did not bother finding fault with him. For the place to rehabilitate. Again, Jun Moxie used his resources, using a large quantity of snow to make a snow room. Under secrecy and without anyone's notice, both of them, with the aid of a large quantity of spiritual pills and heaven and earth's spiritual energy, recovered completely. They could then enter the realms at an enormous speed. But within these few days, people from the outside world became very apprehensive. There still isn't a single news from Xuanshi Immortal Palace. Jing Hong paced around the room, hands behind his back, forehead furrowed with apprehension. What about Ning Wuqing? Did he escape? Although a battle had lost, Jing Hong would never have thought that Xuanshi Immortal Palace's army would be annihilated. The thought would be over-exaggerated and too unbelievable. Although half of Xuanshi Immortal Palace's leading figures were dead. But they still have the far-sighted Ning Wuqing. With one decision-maker, it would be easier to execute implementations. Besides Ning Wuqing, there were 8 more beyond Supreme Masters and 20 Supreme Experts. Given such scale of abilities, depending solely on Supreme Mei would be impossible to defeat, much say to kill all of the opponents. The only biggest possibility was that Supreme Mei escaped when the situation turned unfavorable. But where did Ning Wuqing lead his people to? Or did he manage to catch up at the end? If that was the unfortunate case, at least Mei Supreme had the unrivaled ability to take flight which no one on Earth would be able to compete against. There would be no reason for the opponent to escape. As Jing thought to himself, he began fuming with rage. Ning Wuqing was known as a wily, and his life has been spared for the longest time. How can they lose the chance? No matter if they did get him, win or lose, they should have at least informed. How can they disappear without a trace? I really can't stand what they had done. If they continue to employ such working methods, With no beginning and end in mind, how can they move on to greater endeavors? Xiao Weicheng sat down heavily on the other side of the room. He quietly held on to his teacup, drank his tea and remained silent for a long time. There were 5 to 6 beyond supreme experts in the room, who belonged to the Sea of Fantasy Blood and Supreme Gold City. There was an air of tension in the room. Everyone seemed to ponder about something. There were small flea markets everywhere, and the only guest inn was located here, which had already been occupied by the Sea of Fantasy Blood. Even so, for the large number of people they had, there was insufficient space for them to stay. When Xiao Weicheng and his people arrived, the dining hall had to be turned into a guest room temporarily. The class of Beyond Supreme experts lived like ordinary manual workers, 4 to 5 of them squeezing in a room. How humiliating could this be? Brother Xiao, you mentioned previously that the Supreme Killer Chu Chi Hun had also participated in the battle of the aristocrats sect and Supreme Mei? How true is that? Jing asked, without a tinge of embarrassment, although for a long time no one responded. For a while, he was unhappy and angry. That is my guess. At most. Xiao Weicheng replied heavily, straightening the crown on his head, without battling his eye. Till today, he still dwelt on the battle designed by Jing that Supreme Gold City fought, and had not treated Jing well ever since. If he still harbored the thought of killing Supreme Mei, having the intention for any gains, he would have turned the tide for Supreme Gold City earlier then. What evidence did Brother Xiao have to come to that conclusion? Jing asked thoughtfully. Brother Xiao, it would not have mattered much if there is only a Chu Chi Hun. But Supreme Mei is highly skilled in Xian cultivation, beyond what you and I have mastered. At the moment, she has displayed the violent and malice side of her and is no longer the old, kind-hearted Mei Xue. Given her craftiness, and if she has the mysterious Chu Chi Hun as an assistant on her hands, this will land us in deep trouble. We cannot afford to treat this lightly. I already know this. During the previous battle, this Dang Chu Li Hun was the one plotting to kill so many of us. Xiao Wei added on, a little unwillingly. All the victims were killed with one shot. Even the ones closest to him could not hear any gun shooting at all. Till this decade, no one, other than the scoundrel Chu Li Hun who kills, owns such an immaculate killing skill. As Jing listened on, she was surprised. She, quickly but softly, asked for the reasons behind what had happened. Before the battle, Xiao Wei could only set his opinions aside and recount what had happened, without leaving any information behind. As he recounted, he thought of his brothers, countless of them, who were buried and left in the wilderness. He cannot help but to grit his teeth in anger, the glint of anger in his eyes, his heart boiling with vengeance. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 597. Agent's Report. So as to speak, only Chu Chi Hun, the subject of the rumor, is capable of doing it. I can't imagine that this rascal, who has not even reached the skills level of Beyond Supreme, had carried out such tactics. Jing Hong, who was suddenly concerned of another seemingly big matter at hand, took in a deep breath. So to say, when Venerable Mei came to you and your army at the first round, she was not hurt at all? Are your combat tactics complete? Did you and your army even try to stop her? Xiao Weicheng's face reddened. He slammed the table once, stood up and shouted. Jing Hong, do you really have to mock at old madam? Based on the given situation, if it was you, would you have stopped her? His slam on the table was remarkably loud, causing the public in shock and looked to him. How would I dare? How would I dare? Brother Xiao, please cool down. Xi Jinghong pacified him quickly, but his heart was full of disdain. Clearly, it was you and your army who lacked the guts when encountering Venerable Mei and Chu Chi Hun, whose presence was not even certain. You realized that your tactics were causing damage to your own and decided to retreat without battling. But old madam's replenishment only requires to brush past and say half of a line. Is it a crime to say the truth? Feck. Even if you are fully aware that you will be defeated, you should have risked your life to battle. Even if the whole army is fully defeated, it will be kind to allow us to take an advantage as well. The atmosphere in the room immediately turned awkward. At this time, the door opened and two of them came in lifelessly. They clasped their fists as a form of respect towards Xi Jinghong. Three masters. We have come back. The two of them were whom Xi Jinghong sent to check on the battle situation at the elusive land of the immortals. Good that you have returned peacefully. How is the battle situation there? Xi Jinghong asked urgently. The battle situation is quite disastrous. One of their faces turned solemn. Honestly speaking, we did not discover any specific details of the situation. But based on our experience and judgments, the loss of elusive land of the immortals was definitely not small this time. Or even, this is uncertain, but their whole army might even be already wiped out. What? Xi Jinghong and Xiao Wei Cheng stood up at the same time. Their faces were pale with shock. What is going on actually? Tell us quickly. The two of them were almost asking at the same time. Fundamentally, they had hoped for the strength of the army from the elusive land of the immortals to be weakened. It would be happier if the army was totally wiped out. But if this was true, then the party who had won was no doubt Venerable Mei. They would have to face such a strong opponent. How would they possibly not be in shock? Once we reached the mountain's opening, the ambush that was set by the elusive land of the immortals, we discovered traces of a disastrous battle at 100 meters away. Within the space of a few hundred meters, snowflakes that was accumulated was thoroughly removed. On the floor, there was traces of weaponry used to remove a thick layer, at least half of it 10 meters deep. The marks left by the swords are clearly visible and lifelike. There were visible blood traces on the floors of the few hundred places. The person's face turned solemn and he paced himself. The person is Gobu Huan. Before he went to illusory ocean of blood, he was an expert in the field of tracking. Now that the situation was mentioned, logical and clear, it allowed people to see it in front of their eyes. There are actually hundreds of places with blood traces. Xi Jinghong and Xiao Wei Cheng looked at each other. Both of them were able to identify how stunned the other party was. How disastrous was the battle to have caused a massive scale of blood traces to be present? Such an extreme and disastrous battle would mean that, if this is the case, the subordinate, I, had checked on the blood traces one by one and had identified specifically. Some of the blood traces are bloody red in color, had a slight smell. Most probably are from bodily liquids of the skin or limbs. Some blood traces are thicker and are dark red in color. When it is placed in the mouth, it felt like a solid. They are blood from the organs. Gobu Huan rolled out his tongue, licking his lips all over. His thin and long tongue sliding across his upper and lower lips, giving out a sound. It had definitely brought back memories. The people around him had strange faces and turned their heads around. Seemed like they had the need to vomit. Since he had identified, then we had to go along. The rascal had even tasted. It is fine for you to taste. But why do you have to talk about it? And in such great detail. You idiot. Can't you just tell us directly that the blood traces comes from the organ's blood? You could even relish in the speech. That was human's blood. Feck. What a sicko. Xie Jinghong's face had turned slightly pale. He forced a smile and looked down to avoid looking at his lips and asked, "Are there other clues?" If based solely on blood traces, it is normal that nothing can be confirmed. Hence the subordinate, I, had started to search everywhere for bodies. The three masters. Subordinate, I, had been trapped at the bottom of the cliff in the past with no replenishments. I had resort to eating the flesh from humans' dead bodies, so I am particularly sensitive to the body smell. I thought I could find it easily. Just before he finished his words, someone from the side suddenly stood up with a sound. His face was pale white, clasping his fists at once. The three masters. I had some private matters to settle and I need to take a walk outside. I will make a move first. He lifted off the curtains and walked off, without waiting for Xie Jinghong to reply. Seemed like he's on a run. Instantly, there was a sound of vomiting from the door. Not sure if it was a chain reaction, but a few of the others followed suit and stood up. They gave strange faces when they were informing to leave, and they leaped out the door. Before they made a move, they did not forget to look at the rascal who reported, with hatred in their eyes. They made a harsh vow to themselves to never eat at the same table with this rascal, who actually ate dead bodies' flesh. He is a fecking beast. To kill someone, everyone would have done before, and have killed quite a number of times. But to find someone who eat human flesh, especially the flesh from a dead body, how disgusting, how can this be? Within a short time, there were only 3 people left in the room: Xie Jinghong, Xiao Chengwei, and the rascal who self-proclaimed that he eats dead bodies' flesh. Even the few who accompanied him to survey the terrains were the last to leave in a scurry. It was actually Xie Jinghong and Xiao Chengwei who remained calm even when they were in shock. Although their faces had gone pale and their body were trembling. They even felt something lodged on their throat. It was moving up and down and it seemed like there was something in there to swallow. But they were able to stay calm eventually. They were no doubt the leader figures from the 2 holy cities. They were capable indeed. The 3 masters. Are both of you all right? Guan looked at his figurehead strangely. After a while, Xie Jinghong gurgled with a pale white face. He seemed to have swallowed something. With eyebrows furrowed, and a face of disgust, he waved his hands restlessly. Can you talk directly to the point? Pick the important points. Leave out the unimportant details and talk us straight to the conclusion. Yes. The 3 masters. Subordinate. I had the experience and could naturally understand how dead bodies work. The period not long after his death, there will be a strange smell. It is a special smell, like the smell of the pig flesh that was filled with water. It tasted slightly sour and it is chewy, especially at the thighs, which is fleshy and tasted the freshest. Xie Jinghong could no longer tolerate and threw a kick. The rascal, who was still eyebrows furrowed and in deep thoughts, got a boot, causing him to tumble. Xie Jinghong went forward to step on him and gave him a few punches continuously. Pang! 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 He could not control his anger and retorted. Lousy. I had asked you to speak to the point and talk about the conclusion. But feck you to reminisce endlessly over eating those dead bodies. Did you not have ears or do not grow any brains? Can you not understand the human language? Like how a person's strength may grow weak, a person still has its limits. And there is no exception regardless of what status you are. The usual Xie Jinghong was self-possessed and graceful, having a poised demeanor. He had actually maintained such grace and charm for his entire life. But who would have known that today he would actually throw a fit and spoke a torrent of vulgarities. His usual demeanor had disappeared without a single trace. Not only did he mention lousy, but profanities were tumbling out of his mouth, and he spoke so loudly as though he was afraid that the others could not hear him. His punches were heavy and deadly. Every punch was going against the wind, and the rascal was beaten to a pulp. At the moment, the person with the lowest ability in the inn was the supreme expert. Everyone was sharp and was instantly straining their ears for gossips. Jing went mad. This was really indeed a rare case that had not been seen in 100 years. Why is that really so? To be honest, Xiao Chengwei's face was really awful at the moment. Or maybe this person here did not belong to Great Golden City. Or maybe he should not have crossed the lines to handle other people's matters. When will it be Jing Hong's turn to take the matter to his own hand? He should have left north and south to fight. Now, as he was witnessing Jing Hong lecturing the rascal, as an outsider, not only did he refuse to dissuade them from fighting, but he was exhilarating with joy as he chanted in his heart, "He deserved to be punched. Feck. This is so exciting." Guan was screaming pathetically, but he did not dare to fight back or take a cover. His eyes were filled with hopelessness and anger. What did I do wrong? Why did you have to beat me up? You scum. Up till now, you still do not know where did you do wrong? After a round of flaring up, Jing Hong, who have vented his anger, finally stood up and released him. He finally recovered his usual demeanor after he took in a deep breath and angled his mouth to drink a sip of tea. He said plainly, "Get up on your feet. Then, talk about the important points. The conclusion: you shall not say things that you should not say." Hum. Guan had a face of woe after being forceful tussle. He scrambled to his feet in exasperation. Although he belonged to the supreme class of experts, but Jing Hong was the top-ranked superior, and had the practice as a beyond supreme. The punch was not light at all. But it was met without resistance and any feelings of vengeance. Your subordinate, I, had looked thoroughly within and entirely, but had not came across that smell. He just suffered a few punches, and had definitely analyzed a few reasons roughly. Thus he himself did not dare to continue talking about the specific words especially. Although in his heart, he still hoped to talk about it. But the moment Jing Hong and Xiao Wei Cheng heard the word smell, their faces tensed up and Jing Hong involuntarily clenched his fists tightly. He stared into his eyes with deep hatred. This is absolutely strange. When people just died, it is a definite for them to possess the smell. The smell from the dead body, even though it is buried deep in the ground, is still identifiable and distinct. But there is absolutely no smell coming from that place. Your subordinate, I, had sniffed so hard that it had started to ache, but I am still not able to discover any sort of smell. But the only thing is that the number of people who died from this battle is definitely not less. Huan was in deep thoughts while he spoke, a little confused and unable to comprehend. How would he know if some dead bodies may have been cleaned up by Jun Moxie using the power of earth and were buried in the ground meters below? Separated, heaven and earth. Neither a human nose nor a dog nose will be able to identify the smell. Huan's nose was previously beaten with a punch by Jing Hong. When he was in deep thoughts, blood was flowing from his nose and down his lips. Unnoticeably, he stuck out his thin tongue and gave a clean lick. Then he kept his tongue with a sound and smothered around his lips. Xiao Wei Cheng's anger was rising, increasing in extent till he could no longer endure, but he still forced himself to turn his back. He was afraid that if he continued looking, he would really at that moment cannot help but to pluck out the rascal's tongue and threw it away. If that is the case, then the great golden city and the illusory ocean of the blood would have a big feud. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 598. Xie Jinghong's conclusion. Even though Xie Jinghong finally recovered his vision, his eyes were still a bit dazed. He could only feel that his stomach was in turmoil as he did his best to control his nausea. He said, "Then, what happened?" As a warrior, his strong aura was becoming unstable, to the point that he was even stuttering a little. With his chest heaving up and down, he seemed to be overcome with emotion. After that, your lowly servant continued searching, but in the thick forest that was next to it, a huge path was emptied out by a strong and untamed sword energy that was directed horizontally across it. Because of that, all of the huge trees in the vicinity were uprooted and aligned neatly in 2 rows. And what was strange was that they were spaced out perfectly evenly too. For this level of swords arts, it's really shocking, and even the heavens would cry over this achievement. Before this, I've never seen anyone with such a high level of swords arts. It's not heard of. Guan still seemed shocked. Xie Jinghong and Xiao Wei Cheng made eye contact. From their eyes, they read what the other was thinking about, Tian Fa Heaven's sword. With what your lowly servant could see, that shocking sword energy must have resulted from a chase to the death that led to such a horrifying outcome. I explored the area a little more, but ahead, there was only a cliff at the dead end. When your lowly servant went to take a look, the soil at the edge of the cliff was uneven, and there was obviously a landslide. And it was not too long ago either. It's likely to have happened at the same time as the huge battle. That shocking sword energy extended its power all the way here, but it suddenly stopped there too. According to my humble guess, that landslide was probably caused by another man. But the extent of that landslide was way too huge. I do not dare to say this for sure, but if we were to deduce it logically, it must be the case. He thought about it quietly for a while, and said, "At first, your lowly servant thought that there might be dead bodies below the cliff, and I spent a lot of effort to dig through the remains, but under everything, there was nothing at all, and only a pool of blood stains. So if I dare to presume, it was either because all of the bodies were taken back after the battle with the elusive Land of Immortals battle, or the entire army from elusive Land of Immortals was completely wiped out. The enemy used a strange method to destroy all traces of the bodies. And judging by the state of the remains of the battle, the second scenario seems more likely. Even though the deduction he presented was not correct, but it was not far from the mark. His observations were detailed and unique, with his analysis being clear and easy to understand. He really lived up to his name as a well-established scout. What else? Xie Jinghong's expression was obviously gloomy, and was at the epitome of its darkness. At the side, Xiao Wei Cheng's gaze was also dismal and carried some panic as well. "No, nothing else." Stuttering, Huan was a little shocked by Xie Jinghong's tone. He had already explained the situation very clearly. What else could there have been there? If someone else had gone down to investigate the area, their analysis would not have been as detailed as his. But why did it seem like the leader was still dissatisfied? But for him who had just suffered through a thorough beating, how would he dare to say another word? "Your investigation this time was done well. Go take a rest now." Xie Jinghong waved his hand. "Oh." Huan touched his cheek, his nose, and curiously looked at Xie Jinghong. Meaning to say, So you're just going to let me go like this after beating me up? Since the mission was completed well, shouldn't he get some reward? Why are you still here? Leave! Xie Jinghong unleashed his rage, kicking him in his stomach, causing his frail body to fly out as though he was a rubber ball. Thud! Outside, a loud noise falling onto the ground ensued, and following that, Gobu Huan still gasped. My 3 masters. Your servant has put in so much effort to complete his mission, and as far as he knows, he has not done any wrong, or made any mistakes. Why are you beating me up? I'm so wronged. Indeed, he was wronged. He made such a long trip and brought back such a complete and important report. Even without any reward, he unwittingly withstood their beatings as well. After that, they could hear someone outside clenching their jaw and saying, people like you deserve a beating. Everyone. Destroy him. And it was the voice of a warrior of rank beyond supreme. After that, rumbling noises outside resounded like thunder. Being packed but loud, the screams of pain entered one's ears endlessly. Why hit me? Why? The wailing cries sliced through the ice-cold weather. One could imagine the heated situation where there was one man lying on the ground, surrounded by 7 to 8 people who were ruthlessly trampling on him. In the room, Xie Jinghong quietly sat there, his complexion looking at its worst, and Xiao Weicheng had the exact same expression. The atmosphere was heavy and suppressive. After a long time, Xie Jinghong finally said hoarsely, Bro Xiao, in your opinion, is it that kind of scenario? Xiao Weicheng sucked in a deep breath and said in a blood-curdling voice, the intel your servant provided was detailed and the analysis was on point, logical, and with his analysis, I'm afraid elusive land of immortals. Ning Wuqing and the 29 people involved have already been wiped. How? How could this be possible? His voice was filled with horror and shock. Xie Jinghong raised his head and quietly spaced out. How would he not understand the reasoning behind this? He only hoped that there was a possibility and hoped that he could attain affirmation from Xiao Weicheng as well. That was why he asked such a question. Unfortunately, Xiao Weicheng had the exact same judgment as he did. After a long time, he finally asked, I think so too. For our 3 holy lands, from the past, we've always conquered everything in our path. Unless there was a very important person that we needed to transport back to the city, there has been no other exception. Even though not many people from elusive land of immortals have died outside, but there have still been a few. It was just like that beast at the siege at Tian Forest. It was as though someone had died there. At the time, we had enough men, but we just ignored the matter at the time. And we've never specially allocated resources to deconstruct the situation and figure out what happened. Yes. Especially the scene that Gobu Huan described. Someone must have died at the scene. And it must have been quite a number of people. The men left behind by Ning Wuqing might not have been enough. Even after the battle, even if they survived, they're probably incapacitated or heavily injured. How would they have any energy left to carry the bodies back? It looks like the elusive land of immortals is really done for. Xiao Weicheng sucked in a deep breath. But the only thing I don't understand is, Venerable Mei is cool-headed and kind by nature. It doesn't seem like she'll be the type to massacre people just like that. The winning ticket is in her hands. Or rather I should say that elusive land of immortals' strength is completely insufficient to hold her back. And she didn't have to massacre them to this extent. As long as she could get away, how would Ning Wuqing and the others even catch her? Xie Jinghong frowned, puzzled. And the other thing is, Bro Xiao, did you notice that last sentence? What sentence? Xiao Wei Cheng lifted up his head and looked at him. Just now, Gobu Huan said, we reached the entrance to the mountain and realized that about 100 miles away, there were signs of a violent battle. This sentence. I don't understand. Xi Jinghong frowned, thinking hard. How could such a large battle have taken place so far away from the entrance of the mountain? Ning Wuqing was cunning and wise. His intelligence did not lose to you or me. But there was no way he would have abandoned the mountain entrance, which was the optimal spot for ambush. Instead, he knowingly jumped straight into battle. At a place that was so far away, he started a battle up front. Having a battle there, isn't it a death wish? If that was what we were going to do, why didn't we just stay together and confronted them directly to kill them? The only reason we chose this killing plan in various phases was to counter the Venerable Mei's insane ability to take flight. But Ning Wuqing just jumped out like that. This point here is the most suspicious thing. It is indeed puzzling. Xiao Wei Cheng's gaze was a bit dodgy, and he was a bit guilty inside. But he knew why Ning Wuqing wanted to jump out and send himself to his death. Because of all of this, it was his hint to Ning Wuqing that led to this outcome. If he had not hinted that the Venerable Mei had already suffered heavy injuries, he believed that even if he had given Ning Wuqing countless amounts of courage, he would not have jumped into the battle so illogically. Bro Xiao. Xi Jinghong's penetrating gaze were directed onto him, and Xiao Wei Cheng realized that he had spaced out. And he just saw that Xi Jinghong was looking at him in a very strange way, as though he had seen through him. Unwittingly, he laughed awkwardly, saying, Bro Xi, what's wrong? Xi Jinghong laughed strangely, but he did not pursue this problem. With Xi Jinghong's sharpness, he could tell that Xiao Wei Cheng's demeanor was strange, and it was largely to do with Ning Wuqing and his entire team being wiped out. Xiao Wei Cheng was the first wave of attack, and he had returned with nothing in hand, losing more than half of his men on hand. For such a huge loss, how could Xiao Wei Cheng not be angry? When he passed by Ning Wuqing's ambush location, how could Ning Wuqing not ask about the situation? Xiao Wei Cheng exaggerating the situation was also a possibility. If it happened to him, he would also be salty about how his entire team could have suffered such huge losses without any returns, and the other two teams being untouched. If there were any gains, of course it was not necessary to share them, but if it were losses, of course it would be better to share them. But this guy had suffered the ultimate loss. It must have been a simple few sentences that sent the 29 warriors from elusive land of immortals to their death doors. Suppose that if he were to work together with this guy in future, he had to be careful. Otherwise he could be sold out by this guy at any time. And there is another suspicious point. That is the reason why the Venerable Mei fought. Both you and I know that even though Venerable Mei shows no mercy to her enemies, but she always takes stock of the entire situation first. As to taking part in the heavenly battle, especially to those warriors at beyond supreme rank, she's always been merciful to them, and has never killed them. But this time, she killed them mercilessly, leaving nothing behind. It was completely one-sided, forcing the people from the elusive land of immortals to the brink, wiping them all out. There must be a loophole in this. But if there was a reason behind this, what kind of reason would have forced her to deal such a heavy blow? And it has to be a reason that would make her ignore the consequences to the heavenly battle as well. Xi Jinghong was deep in thought, voicing out his second question. It must have been because Ning Wuqing and the others did something to trigger the Venerable Mei's rage, and they must have done something that she would not tolerate at all. This is what we should think about. Xiao Wucheng heaved a sigh of relief. By saying this, the responsibility was no longer directed on him. This is, of course, something that we can imagine, but what would have triggered her rage? With her temperament, how would she even get angry at all? On that day, Elusive Land of Immortals collaborated with 10 experts to kill her. And it did not even trigger her to kill them in response. Could it be? Jing Hong's gaze lit up. Jun Moxie? That should be it. Venerable Mei has been training for so many years. And she has never had any relationships with anyone. This time, she fell in love with Jun Moxie. And that's a love that would ignore everything else. Xiao Wei Cheng and Jing Hong were humane creatures. How could they not understand this? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 599. The plan at Tian Guan Lin. But if at this time, say if someone injured Jun Moxie, Venerable Mei would definitely fight them to the death. But this injury must have been very serious. Xiao Wei Cheng cautiously suggested. Light injuries wouldn't have triggered that level of killing intent from Venerable Mei, and she even used the Tian Fa Heavenly Sword skill. So it must have been a heavy injury. Or perhaps even death. Yep, that's highly likely. If that's the case, that'd explain Venerable Mei's rage. In that state, it's obvious that she'd ignore all consequences. But even if Venerable Mei has the power to decimate the entire elusive land of immortals' 29 elite warriors, what about herself? Jing Hong's gaze reflected a cold glint. She can't have escaped unscathed, right? Wouldn't that make her practically a god? Naturally, that's impossible. Killing 9 beyond supreme ranked warriors and 20 supreme ranked warriors without a single injury. Bro Z. That's a complete joke. And it's not even funny. Xiao Wei Cheng laughed, saying, I'm guessing that the Venerable Mei right now is, at most, at half of her strength. And that's already the best case scenario. Yep, that's logical. Right now, Venerable Mei must be heavily injured. And, after rampaging like that, her Xian Qi must be equivalent to nil. Without spending some time to recover, there's no way she can return to her original condition. Jing Hong eyes glinted as he said, This is our chance. Xiao Wei Cheng also got excited and said, Agreed. It might be the best time to kill the Venerable Mei now. It's a 1 in a million chance. We have to take it. So, we're betting on Jun Moxie being alive, right? Ha ha ha. Jing Hong's obnoxious laughter resounded. Why do we have to hope that he isn't dead? If her beloved has left this world, she must be in both physical and emotional pain and mourning over his death. Her will to fight must be very weak too. Isn't that better for us? Xiao Wei Cheng found it a little strange. If Jun Moxie really died, would Mei Xue Yan still walk on this path? Jing Hong scoffed. Oh. So that's it. But since Venerable Mei is still around, unless Jun Moxie died on the spot, she would definitely have pulled out all the stops to save him, even at the cost of her own life. Xiao Wei Cheng laughed too. If my guess is right, Jun Moxie is definitely alive. How would you know that? This time, Jing Hong was confused. If Jun Moxie really died, even if Mei Xue Yan did not destroy the bodies in despair, she definitely wouldn't have been so considerate as to take care of those corpses, right? Xiao Wei Cheng proudly smiled as he said, If our guess is right, and the entire squad from the elusive land of immortals was wiped, then the one who took care of the bodies must have been Venerable Mei. And she did it by using one of the secret techniques from Tian Fa sect, which is why no traces were left behind. Don't you agree on this, Bro Z? Agreed. That is very reasonable. Ha ha ha. Xi Jinghong laughed heartily. But Bro Z, if Venerable Mei is injured now, her whereabouts must be unknown. If we stay here, isn't that too? If they get away like this, what do we do? Xiao Wei Cheng said worriedly. We need to know that a chance like this is too rare to let go. If we let this slip, it'll be a waste. Bro Xiao, calm down. Do you know why I steered away from the main road and chose to wait here? Xi Jinghong smiled in a secretive manner. I didn't think about that. But please, enlighten me, Bro Z. Huh. There's a mountain not far from here. You could even say that it's very well known. As long as Jun Moxie is here. Even if it's a roundabout path that is 100 miles away, he'll have to go through this mountain. And we'll be there to ambush Jun Moxie and Venerable Mei. This ultimate plan is free from loopholes. I can guarantee that. Xi Jinghong smiled proudly as he said slyly. Once they show up, that'll become Venerable Mei's deathbed. Mountain? What kind of mountain would bring them there? Xiao Wei Cheng got even more curious. How could a mountain bring Jun Moxie and Venerable Mei here? Like bees attracted to honey? What logic was this? Tian Guan Lin. Xi Jinghong's eyes unwittingly revealed a few hints of slyness. And even some hint of respect. Tian Guan Lin. The place where the ultimate generation of military gods of the country of Tianxiang buried the White Robe Army General, Jun Wuhui. That is the burial grounds of the most valued White Robe General, Jun Wuhui. On that day, Jun Wuhui was ambushed. The White Robe Army generals protected him to the end, sacrificing themselves to do so. Even though Jun Wuhui was heavily wounded by the first blow, but when he died, he was the last one to fall. The White Robe Army? The general of the White Robe Army? Xiao Wei Cheng's eyes also shone with admiration. To live and die together and to enjoy glory and luxuries with my brethren, the White Robe Army, with their white robes stained in blood. They walked on the rainbow path with Wu Hui, with the one who shed the most blood on the mountains. So, this was where he. In his voice, there was a tone of casualness, but even more so than that, his voice was overwhelmed with awe. Not bad. After Jun Wuhui died, this became his resting place. This was where the military general of the century fought, and it's the place where you can find most of his traces. Even more so, it was also the place where he fell. In the year when Jun Wuhui fell to the ambush, 3,000 of his closest guards gave up their armors and returned here to stay and protect his grave. How could Jun Moxie not come here? Xi Jinghong sighed imposingly. It was 3,000 of his closest guards. Bro Xiao. These people. Any one of them could have become a main pillar in the military. As long as they returned to Tianxiang. Even though they may not enjoy a life of luxuries and riches. But they could definitely make a living. Instead, they collectively gave up everything they had in their careers to protect this barren, destitute land with their master's grave. And with that, they did that for 10 years' worth with no regrets. And they even brought their families here to settle down. Jun Wuhui's charisma. Exactly how influential was he? For them to make such a decision? Finishing his words, Xi Jinghong closed his eyes as if he had transported back in time, reminiscing about the legendary White Robe General. He was truly a great man. Xiao Wei Cheng cheered. Listening to you say this, I can't help but be filled with respect for this White Robe General. A character like this is definitely worthy of our praise. Xie Jinghong sighed. To Jun Hui, people like us are only considered younger apprentices. But he has never lost a battle and has always fought relentlessly. In the country of Tianxiang, and maybe in the entire mainland, he's a legendary character that's equivalent to have walked out of a book. It's a pity that even the most honorable legends will have a day when they fall. But his decline was disappointing and unworthy. He paused, saying, even though the mountain is far from the city, but in a land filled with the history of bloodshed, there is also Jun Wuhui's legend. Even though he did not train his Xian Qi to an especially high level, but he was resilient, composed, and wise. To his subordinates, he was generous and loved his army like his sons. To the residents, he was compassionate. But at the same time, he was vicious and killed decisively. He served the people generously, loyal, brave, decisive and daring. He had a lot of pride. With his belief in justice, he was also easygoing. He was simply a legendary character that came once in 1,000 years. Even when he dueled with the generals, all of them put their hands up, surrendering to him. And some of them even held heartfelt, genuine respect to him. From the past till today, there has been no other general like Jun Wuhui in this world, not even in the ancient times. Xiao Weicheng also heaved a deep sigh of relief, saying, not bad, Jun Wuhui, if we were to mention him. I myself am filled with overwhelming respect for him too. But it's a pity that for such a hero of a lifetime, for him to have fallen to a bunch of rogues from the Silver City of Wind and Snow, that was something that made us despair. Xie Jinghong sneered as he said, speaking of this, just as I was about to attack the Silver City of Wind and Snow. Su's family was simply overwhelming. It really is a waste. It was definitely a waste then, that I missed a concert to see the legend in action. Since that's the case, we're intending to lay waste to his own son and daughter-in-law in front of his grave. Isn't that disrespectful? After all, for military personnel like them, men like him are scarce. Considering his position, should we reconsider? Xiao Weicheng's eyes flashed as he said imposingly, how about we intercept them at the foot of the mountain? After all, in Tian Guanlin, there are also about 3,000 of his foot soldiers. If they see the way we are going to treat their son, how could they not fight to the death? Even though these people were not well versed in martial arts and their Xian Qi was weak, but it was still a force after all. And they were all hot-blooded men. Killing many people, the end is a waste. And it would destroy the balance of peace too. Venerable Mei isn't Jun Wuhui's daughter-in-law yet. Also, we weren't going to kill Jun Moxie right from the start. After all, the consequences of killing him are way too severe. Xie Jinghong stood up and paced around for a while, using his hands to rub his temple. As to those 3,000 close soldiers, forget it. We'll intercept them after they leave the mountain. Taking the white-robed general's position into account, we'll let them have a chance to pray and visit him. He exhaled a deep breath, mumbling, Jun Wuhui. Jun Wuhui. For a human to be able to achieve this much in this world, it's never before seen. It is indeed a legend. The entire mainland spread his achievements, and even we who are from the 3 Holy Lands still respect him as a junior. He shook his head and laughed mockingly. In my entire life, I, Xie Jinghong, have never had a person I've looked up to. Unexpectedly, I've complimented a legendary oldie general so much. Xiao Weicheng also heaved a sigh of relief. To him, dealing with Xue Yan in front of Jun Wuhui's grave was nothing. But the key lay in those 3,000 close soldiers. They were great men with nerves of steel. For these people, he really did not want to kill them. Even though Xi Jinghong and Xiao Weicheng were planning to kill Mei Xue Yan, but the both of them were not rotten to the core. It was just that they were a bit manipulative, and each of them had their own positions on the matter. In life, men always retained their humanity. Even in the three holy cities, the heavenly battle was their own personal missions. Even though the way the matters were handled over the past few years was haughty, but they still protected the mainland for tens of thousands of years. Out of all their achievements, it was hard to say. But no matter their evaluation, their work would always be more important than their past achievements. Bro Z, if that's the case, then have you gone to Tian Guan Lin before? Xiao Weicheng asked. In fact, I've gone up before to look at this white-robed army general and I've presented 3 joss sticks to him. I also left 10,000 silver to sponsor those close guards of his. Xi Jinghong laughed self-mockingly as he shook his head. On his face, it reflected distress. Come to think of it, it's really funny and even I thought that it was unpredictable. I'm thinking up of a plan to deal with his son and future daughter-in-law. But I've unknowingly done something like this. That is, really unexpected. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 600. Before Tian Guan Lin. Impossible, Xi Jinghong said repeatedly. He was puzzled and stayed in silence for very long before saying, "There's nothing in front of Jun Wuhui's grave. Nothing." His sword was resting on the altar, and it was extremely clean and shiny. His grave was not even a cenotaph, it was a martial tent. There were chairs and tables, benches, martial desk, command plate. Everything was sparkly clean, and Jun Wuhui's statue was sitting right at the center. There are army camps all around. Everything was placed at where they are supposed to be at, with utmost accuracy. There are 3,000 guards. And every day there would be people patrolling the premise, just like how it was like when Jun Wuhui was still alive. There was top-level security and everyone entering and leaving would have to undergo a thorough check. There was no exceptions. A soldier on patrol would be in proper attire with serious expression. There was no room for jokes. Moreover, their attire is the army attire from a decade ago. These people, they are really acting like they are not just guarding a tomb, but the martial camp from back in time. Their loyalty really goes deep into their bone. Brother Xiao, it might be possible for one person, a few dozen or a few hundred, but to think this trend extends to the entire army. This cannot be possible but for the legendary commander. He took a deep breath. If Jun Wuhui was still alive, even I would like to meet him for myself. Xiao Weicheng was really amazed too, and said in response, "Same here. I'm going to pay my respect to this white-shirt marshal up on the mountain tomorrow." Xi Jinghong smiled, and said, "No matter how beautiful the legend is, there will be a full stop drawn to it one day. I think there is none other than this legendary commando who kept his soldiers' loyalty to him even after his death. No doubt you want to pay him your respects. Even though we are juniors to him, it would still mean something to him." Xiao Weicheng's expressions were dead serious, and he nodded with a heavy heart. Heroes appreciated and respected one another, and it was not affected by backgrounds or skill levels. After a few days with gloomy weather, the sky was finally clear. The sun was bright and shone brightly over the lands. Everything was white under the sunlight, as if the world was chiseled from a block of pure white jade. It was so bright that if one did not use power to protect his eyes and glimpsed at the sun, one would feel pain in his eyes. The weather was extremely cold despite the sun. There were two silhouettes gliding along the path with great agility, as if they were weightless. They moved through the thick snow in a flash, with zero effort. Even the legendary ability to take flight, tracelessly, could not match up to their level. One might only be able to match up to their level if they reached the even scarier level of traveling through vacuum. But these people did not seem like it either. Indeed, these two were not using ability to take flight. Both of them had some weird device tied onto the bottom of their feet. If it was ability to take flight, there was no need for this type of burden. They were holding a thin branch in hand, and poking left and right. As much as they looked really absurd, it was making their traveling rather comfortable, easy and fast. They looked like two white meteorites flying across the land as they sailed through the white snow. At a closer look, one would realize it was a teenage boy and girl. They were really attractive. The guy was handsome and energetic, while the girl was gorgeous and luring. What a match made in heaven! Clouds were drifting across the sky, against the white snow covering the numerous mountains and valleys. The duo's black hair and white clothes were lifted by the wind. This scene looked like it was taken right out of a painting. There was a split road ahead, where the mountain range was ending. The path split the hills, and at one of the path, there was a pointer, Tian Guan Lin. Blood tears from the heaven. Every word was written with great emotions and an untamed air, but all to the point of conveying the sadness and helplessness of a hero at his wit's end. Jun Moxie saw those few words from quite a distance away. They gave him a strong and overwhelming sense of sadness. Jun Moxie halted from his high-speed movement. He stood in front of the monument and felt a strange feeling welling up inside. What's wrong? His pause let Mei Yan Xue overtook him in an instant, who had to turn back to check on Jun Moxie. Today's Mei Yan Xue was no longer a newbie, and she could control her movements however she liked. Otherwise, it would not have been possible for her to execute that turn, which was actually very difficult. Gliding through the snow was tricky stuff. Hearing Mei Yan Xue's question, Jun Moxie acted as if he did not hear anything and remained in silence for very long, staring hard at the words. His gaze was showing glimpses of his loss, sadness and bitterness, as his scroll of ancient memories was unfolded in front of him at that moment. Tian Guan Lin. Blood tears from heaven. Mei Yan Xue read the words out. Suddenly it rang the bell in her head. Her eyes opened wide in surprise. Here lies your father. Uncle? Mei Yan Xue was too shocked to speak coherently. Judging by age and power, she really should not be calling Jun Moxie's father uncle. Yes, it's my father. Jun Moxie did not care about the inaccuracy in her words. This reply flowed out naturally. His expression was serious as he slowly said. This place was his last battlefield, where he would forever rest in. He stared in sadness at the words, emotions mixing and crashing around in his heart. It seemed that this was the first time for both the previous Moxie, or himself after his travel through time and space into this world. Jun Moxie really wanted to grab the old Moxie's soul and give him a good beating. Jun Moxie used to think that this brat was just wasteful, but it now seemed like he was also unfilial. No matter how far it was, as a son, he should have visited his father's grave for at least twice every year. But he did not come here in 10 years. Not even once. Let's take this path. Jun Moxie's voice was low as he looked towards the Tian Guan Lin's direction. Mei Yan Xue agreed softly and never spoke again. She quietly followed behind Jun Moxie, and neither of them used the traveling technique again, or snow sled for that matter. They walked, step by step. Thoughts were drifting away from them and everything seemed intangible at that moment. Even though the path was covered by a thick layer of snow, it was obvious that it was cleaned usually by many people. It was sparkly clean everywhere, and even the flowers and bushes along the cliff were trimmed perfectly. There might be people from the illusory ocean of blood along this path to ambush us. Jun Moxie was walking with his hands behind. His slow stroll and his drifting voice made it seem like he was saying something irrelevant. If they were really going to ambush us, I, Jun Moxie, swear here and now that no matter what it would take, I would murder all of the 3 holy lands. Everyone, every plant, every soul and their civilization's work and success earned from 1,000 years of hard work would all be crushed in my hands. His tone was light and indifferent, but Mei Xue could hear the immovable determination inside. I don't think it would happen. Even though the 3 holy lands have problems against us, the Tian forest, they should know how important this place is. So I don't think they would do something so inhumane, Mei Xue said lightly. She knew what Jun Moxie was thinking. To ambush a person's son in front of his grave was utterly inhumane and cruel. No matter how evil the person was, he would think twice before doing things like this. Not only would it be inhumane, it would even cost him his credits for the underworld. This would be a taboo. Hopefully, it would be their blessings from their ancestors if they don't do it. You touch a dragon's scale, you would be presented with death instantly. You touch my scale, all your 10 generations would die in my hands. Jun Moxie said, his eyes sharp despite his calm voice. Mei Xue was speechless. She followed closely behind, and dissed him in her heart, seriously, who do you think you are? If the 3 holy lands chose not to ambush us, it just means that they know their standards. Blessings from ancestors? 10 generations would all die. Who do you think you are? Nothing could sound wilder and more untamed than killing more than 9 generations of a person. 10 generations. However, Mei Xue believed that Jun Moxie would do it and he could do it. Even if he did not have enough power at the moment, he would be able to do it in the future. She was sure of this. The 2 sped up. They looked like 2 meteorites moving forward. The path ahead was getting broader, and on the next turn, both of them stopped short and looked at what was in front. In the distance, there was a group of about 100 shirtless men, shoving snow in this cold weather. All of them were hot and sweaty from doing work, and all their hot breath seemed like fog. All these grown men did not have very high Xian Qi level, at most silver Xian level. In this cold weather, they must have spent quite some time to get things done. The people at the front were shoving away snow, piling snow up. At the back, there were people pushing small cart and carrying the snow into the snow cart to be transferred away. This would be followed up by someone with a special large broom who would continue sweeping away the snow until the soil and rocks could be seen. No one was talking. Everyone was hard at work. This job was extremely holy. It could be seen that the road behind them was very clean without any snow. It was as if the workers shaved off a layer of the ground. The winding path disappeared into the distance. With this place being so inaccessible, even if it could be used to travel, there would be very few people who actually would use it. Jun Moxie felt that his nose was uncomfortable. He knew just what was wrong with this place. These people looked like they were above 30 years old. Some were even older. But none was over 40 years old. They all looked crazed and orderly, which was a little strange. This story will be continued to chapter 601. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, Please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.